Good morning. This is Paul Allison from Limitless Space Institute in Houston, Texas. Welcome to today's Houston Tech Rodeo Aerospace Space Track. Today's presentation is presented by TexSpace and creating opportunities for aerospace startups in Space City. And we're honored today to have Jack Fisher, who is the Vice President of Strategic Programs for Intuitive Machines, one of the fastest growing aerospace companies in the area. Twofish has a distinguished 24-year Air Force career. He was an astronaut in a 2017 mission to the International Space Station, having 136 days, which included 2 spacewalks. And prior to joining Intuitive Machines, was the Chief Technical Officer for Collins Aerospace in Houston, one of the many companies, again, in our domain that are in Houston, supporting a very large and growing aerospace industry. Twofish, welcome this morning. How are you?
Man, Paul, I'm doing great. Thank you so much to you, Limitless Space, and the Houston Tech Rodeo for allowing me to join you this morning and talk a little more about this town I love.
Great. Well, I'm going to sign off. I'll be in the background and we'll have questions later. Thank you again for all your help today.
Sounds great. And what I'm going to try kind of a new setup. So bear with me. And if it doesn't work, Fro is going to help fix it in the background with his magic. All right. We got that. We got this. We got this. All right. Can y'all see my screen?
Looks good, Twofish.
Looks great.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks again for having me and letting me be a part of this wonderful event. I'm here today to talk about TexSpace. And let me start by saying this briefing is not an overview of a final solution. Absolutely not. Rather, it's a call to arms. It's a vision of how Houston can compete, and in my opinion, be a dominant player in the space economy today and in the future. Let's see. Hopefully it will flip slides as well. There we go. All right, I passed my first test. So quite simply, the vision is to create a nexus of civil, commercial, and military space that accelerates innovation. We can do that by synergizing the very best we have to offer here in Houston and in the great state of Texas to remove barriers. We are uniquely suited to excel in developing space hardware, fueled by a ton of shared infrastructure, robust funding, and a top-ranked innovation community that can reach across our strengths in energy and biotech. Now, a picture is worth 1,000 words and a video is worth even more. So let's take a look at what TexSpace is all about.
We are powering the future of space.
This city of Houston, this state of Texas.
We chose to go to the moon in 1962.
Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept.
NASA rose to the challenge. We copy it down, Eagle. Tackled the task. And made us Space City.
Thank you very much.
The final liftoff of Atlantis, shoulders of the space shuttle. America will continue the dream.
Now to another big step for Space City.
This time it is a team effort between government and private companies.
The foundation of the future is already laid.
City leaders broke ground on phase 1 of the spaceport. The first company to sign on as a tenant is Intuitive Machines.
TexSpace is leading the charge towards redefining Space City, bringing civil, commercial, and military space together to accelerate innovation. With a first-of-its-kind space innovation hub,
we can share our intellectual capital back and forth to be able to create amazing advances in space and aviation.
TexSpace's barrier-breaking approach is opening new doors for companies and entrepreneurs to ignite meaningful change with shared infrastructure, robust funding networks, and connected innovation communities. Now is the time to power the future of space.
Man, I wish I had a sexy voice like that, dude. One thing he mentioned was breaking barriers. And what we mean with that is that space has long been too expensive for most companies. Most folks just can't play in the game. Only nations or huge corporations have been able to pay that bill. And it kept the very engine of innovation, like small businesses, entrepreneurs, other industries, those people with ideas, it kept them out of the fight. Well, the last decade has provided us disruptive technologies that have changed the game. The cost of launch continues to go down. AI, big data, additive manufacturing, to name a few, the list goes on, but the result is the same. We are lowering barriers, igniting innovation, and in the process, turbocharging the world's space economy. I'm serious. The world's space economy is growing by leaps and bounds. Just check out these numbers from Space Capital. Equity investment has been ramping up for years, $186 billion over the last 10 years. Even $25.6 billion last year in the middle of a global pandemic like COVID. That's not so bad. Also of note, China and the US account for 75% of that investment. While there is no official announcement, make no mistake, there is a new space race afoot, and the world all sees where the future is headed. When I say that the world's noticed, they have. Just look at the number of spaceports in the US, and there are many more around the world. I also added a new organization I recently found out about called the Keystone Space Collaborative in Pittsburgh. It's a good example of the larger trend. There are countless communities, whether they call themselves spaceports or not, both here and abroad, that are making a concerted effort to capture their piece of the ultimate marketplace. The moral of this story is that there is a lot of competition, but I think Houston is uniquely positioned to create something truly special in a sea of competitors. Let's take a look at us. So we are the only spaceport in a major city. Fourth largest, we're with our sights set on third, with all the cultural, economic, and quality of life benefits that come with that. We're the energy capital of the world. We have one of the largest US medical research centers, obviously home to NASA's hub for human spaceflight. We have countless Fortune 500 and Fortune 1000 headquarters here in Houston. Diversity of thought, this is awesome. Because that diversity of thought accelerates innovation. We have 145 languages spoken in this city and representation from 90 nations around the world. That's the third in the US. We have 85% of the largest aerospace manufacturers here, 2 of 11 commercial spaceports. We have launch sites at Van Horn, McGregor, and Boca Chica. When we're ranked #1 in air transportation employment with 20,000 aerospace engineers, scientists, and other pros, surrounded by a leading aerospace college and university network. And one that's close to my heart is that we're home to new space commercial industry titans like SpaceX, Blue Origin, Axiom, my personal favorite and current boss, Intuitive Machines, Firefly, and many more. Of course, I am partial to Intuitive Machines as I sit here in Nova Control, which is their lunar mission control. That early next year will be full of people returning us to the moon for the first time in 50 years, all from a control room here in Houston. Boom. Now, I did hopefully make you feel good about our chances to compete, but don't get cocky. The competition is fierce. And while we are dominant in a lot of areas, we have holes. We've got great entrepreneurs, investment, funding structure, innovation ecosystem that is extremely competitive, academia, as I mentioned, and industry. Obviously, we've got commercial and international nailed, and NASA with the civil space, all brought together at the nexus of the Houston spaceport. There's a couple things we're missing though. We need more attention in plugging national security space in a meaningful way. You see, the space economy has three main pillars: that of civil space, like NASA, commercial space, which has become the largest, and military or national security space, like the Space Force. In Houston, we obviously have Johnson Space Center, and it's a world leader in human spaceflight. Commercial space is also doing well with our international ties, numerous industry leaders like we recently discussed. What we don't have is a solid connection with national security space. And we'll talk that more here in a moment. The other thing that's missing is one-stop shopping for the state and local government support. Much like Space Florida has done for Florida, there should be no doubt in the minds of young entrepreneurs, established businesses, or investors. Where is it that I should go first if I'm considering Houston and Texas as home? And that is far more than just a website. It's an artful fusion of the incredible people and resources this city has to offer. And that's tough. Not to liken this effort to war, but I believe Admiral Yamamoto's quote following the Pearl Harbor attack is appropriate. You remember he said, "I fear we have awakened a sleeping giant." Well, let's wake it up. Of all the resources we have as a city and state, we have no singular vision, no sense of urgency to compete in this market. If we could unify those resources, boy, oh boy, watch out. And that's the goal, to build a cohesive vision, to unify everything that we have to awaken that sleeping giant. Those next steps are going to be getting authoritative leadership, establishing our structure, and getting the sponsorship to fund engagement. So that the future, that overall vision of a one-stop answer for space in Texas that can accelerate innovation, synergize infrastructure, get all the funding and resources that companies need to build and sustain an interconnected innovation ecosystem. To make that happen, we need a concerted effort by us all, and we have made some headway. On 16 April, the Bay Area Houston Economic Partnership, BAYHEP, convened a meeting of its Aerospace Advisory Committee and Aerospace Task Force to take a deeper look at what we can do as a community to get this giant moving. Now, please don't be upset if you weren't part of that conversation. It was just a first step, and there is significantly more work to do, more people to involve, especially GHP and our massive innovation ecosystem players. But I think folks can agree on some basic points and areas that we need to focus on. Obviously, the innovation and entrepreneurial spirit, I think we got that lit. We got a ton of R&D investment in industry. Capital and infrastructure we do have, but we are lacking in ready facilities that those new entrepreneurs and businesses can move into. The workforce and education, you've heard earlier today about the EDGE program, among others, that are building our workforce of the future. I think what's most important right now is to get an aligned vision, an aligned narrative, some form of leadership that is authoritative and given that authority through the city and state to garner the political and community support we need and federal and state coordination that we need for effective engagement. Like I said before, we need to synergize all three of the parts of the space economy, and we need to do a needs analysis. GHP, BAYHEP, Houston Airport System, San Jacinto Community College, and others have all done a needs analysis of some sort or another that have been taking a deeper look at where are the sweet spots that Houston can focus on. When I talk about the sweet spots, I mean, where can we get the biggest bang for the buck? Where can we win and lead the country and the world in terms of the space economy? Larry Peterson, a key figure in the Austin innovation ecosystem and currently at the National Security Innovation Council in Austin, asked me the other day, where does Houston, where does Texas have differentiation over other communities? Where can we excel? One model for analyzing this and applying the results for an action plan is the Cluster Initiative, made popular by Christian Kettles in his Green Book. They break down focus areas much in the same way that we've done, and then try to group a cluster of winners. Focus on things we can do better than anyone, source them, and let that success breed more success as we grow the space innovation community. As I mentioned before, I think building a bridge to national security space should be a short-term focus for our community and a place where we can excel. Now, there was a State of the Space Industrial Base Committee, huge effort by the Department of Defense to understand the industrial base we need going forward. Their number one recommendation was that industry should aggressively pursue partnerships with the US government to develop and operate joint commercial, civil, and defense space capabilities. It's that dual use technology that is key for explosive growth, because you are dramatically increasing the funding base and the pool of end users through technologies that can be used across the spectrum of the space economy. And we're the perfect place for NSS to engage. Current facilities and staff in Houston are inadequate to fully utilize the extensive Houston civil and commercial space assets that we have. We are engaged currently in pushing for a commercially available SCIF, a classified facility, if you will, that is and appropriate networks and sufficient space to accommodate small detachments from those key innovation nodes within the Department of Defense. In doing so, we can build a bridge to engage NSS and utilize a key asset that we have in going forward. So let's do it. Let's build a bridge and utilize all that Houston has to offer. So I'm going to leave some time for questions, and I do believe we've talked through all of these. Obviously, our next steps are to unite Space City, get that common vision, identify the appropriate leadership, do a needs analysis to find the sweet spots where we can focus and win, build that bridge to national security space so they can capitalize on what I call our space awesomeness. Obviously, we want to build up Houston. Part of that is in building a resource registry where we identify all of the infrastructure and resources available to young entrepreneurs and businesses as a whole. So that as opposed to spending money on expensive equipment, they can use someone else's, like NASA's, and bypass that barrier to entry. We do need to get established as a 501c3, start taking on the sponsorships, and then obviously engaging more. So bottom line, it's time to awaken the sleeping giant. I've given you a lot to chew on today, and while I am 100% confident that we don't have the complete and total answer of how to perfectly craft and source Houston as a worldwide leader in space innovation, I am 100% sure that Houston has way too much to offer the overall space enterprise, and we cannot afford to squander this unique moment in history. I ask you, and heck, I ask all of you to step forward and help us make Houston and Texas as a whole the space city of the future, not just our past. To make that happen, and to make sure our amazing resources are utilized to their full potential, we need a senior aerospace leader able to devote themselves full-time to leading this effort. We need sponsors to get it going. We need our innovation and aerospace leaders to help source a robust infrastructure registry. And we need entrepreneurs to choose Houston as home. Folks, all the pieces are there. Let's truly awaken this sleeping giant and show the world what Houston can do. All right, with that, I'm going to see if I can turn back on this video, stop sharing, and get to questions.
Jack, thanks. That was fantastic. Thanks for that overview of TexSpace and a lot of the detail that you shared. I think is great information. Is there a contact person like yourself that people who want to answer this call to action can get in touch with, email or some other fashion that would be helpful to you?
Absolutely. So we've actually set up a website. It's texspace.org, AROORG. If you go there, there's links where you can engage us. Primarily BAHEP. So the president there, Bob Mitchell, and Kim Morris are leading the effort for now out of BAHEP, and connecting with them through the website is probably the easiest way to go forward.
All right, that's great. So I'm going to repeat that for answering Jack's call to action here and to get engaged and learn any more details on how you can participate. Please go to texspace.org. That's TEXSPACE.org. And if you can respond via that, both Bob Mitchell, who is the president of the Bay Area Houston Economic Partnership, and Kim Morris, I believe Kim position, I could be wrong on this, director of membership, but anyway, both of them are senior leaders of BAHEP and very interested in engaging with everyone in the community.
One thing
go ahead.
I forgot to mention, and I'd be remiss if I didn't. BAHEP has been key in this as part of, they have an established Space Act agreement with NASA. I mentioned that infrastructure registry and being able to use those expensive pieces of equipment like a thermal vacuum chamber. They got that process down to almost a week, where a young company that needs to test space hardware can coordinate through BAHEP and a smaller entity within BAHEP called BayTech that can schedule and use that resource. That is a huge capability that we have, an advantage as a city. I'd also like to thank Gallant Culture. They have donated all their time to do all the great graphics and intuitive machines. Obviously, my boss lets me spend some time on this. And our communications director, Josh Marshall, for putting together that video. And my boss's boss, Cam Gaffarian, who talked earlier this morning, for also supporting. So those are kind of the big sponsors right now. Obviously, we're going to have to expand that as we go forward.
Well, thank you too, Fish. So we have a question about the SCIF, and if the SCIF is available for co-working spaces, factory R&D facilities. Is it available for some type of public-private partnerships to develop?
So that would be down the road. Anyone who's familiar with these classified facilities, it is a rather lengthy process to get them approved. You have to have a sponsor organization and or a contract that requires that clearance. We are actively engaged with the Space Force Test and Evaluation, with the Defense Innovation Unit, and with AFWorks and SpaceWorks to find that sponsor. Once we get it opened, the first step is really going to be so that all of the resources and capabilities within Houston can plug into national security space through those organizations. So they would have a office right next to that commercially available SCIF, so that they can plug into the network and be the translator, the connector back to that larger marketplace. As that grows, once we have it open and sponsored and have a clearance, then you can expand to get the networks needed and to have a co-working space where other companies can come in and utilize it. But it does not happen overnight. So I don't want to make any false impressions from folks that, and next week we're going to be a fully classified environment that can do anything. Absolutely not. We're going to make the first step so that a year from now, we're a heck of a lot better than we are now. And 5 years from now, we are full up.
All right, well, that gives some kind of a timeline, which hopefully is helpful to that question in answering that. It sounds like from what you've described, Two Fish, that your efforts at TexSpace are really, in part at least, focused on allowing a lot of different entrepreneurs that may not have and probably do not have the same level of resources like Musk or Bezos to participate and contribute. Is that accurate?
Oh, absolutely. And one of the coolest parts of Houston is, man, our innovation ecosystem. And, I could list all these from the Ion Now, Mass Challenge, Accenture, Greentown Labs. Oh my gosh, we are loaded. Capital Factory. There are so many resources, but in the past, we've been, as a city, more focused on energy and biotech. Well, energy, we need energy in space too. And so if you can fuse those innovation cultures and you can leverage all of the investment and ideas across them, nobody's going to be able to compete with us. That's what's so exciting about Houston as a whole. So hopefully folks aren't thinking, I am only talking to you if you have an idea about space. No, ideas transcend those barriers that we artificially put in between domains. And space has a lot of analogs here on Earth. I mentioned energy. Obviously, as an astronaut, there is so much that the biotech industry has developed. And our sister company, Axiom, down the street is obviously going to be focused a lot on that and that biotech revolution. So try to erase the barriers in your mind so that we can utilize resources across all of these industries. And yeah, compete with SpaceX and Bezos, but more than compete, let's leverage. Let's use those together to get more innovation, to get more resources, and to accelerate change.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. In fact, I might even put a little plug in here for Limitless Space Institute in terms of triggering the imagination that really does sort of take out the walls of anyone's ideas of silos, if you will, across any of these industries because of the creative talent that we have, the scientific training and the engineering capacity and technical acumen of our Houston area. And so hopefully that the people watching this will share this information with others as well to, as you say, leverage all of those assets that we have here.
Yeah, and BK is going to be mad at me for not mentioning the other the other part of the chemosphere, but obviously Limitless Space is definitely that forward-looking by the end of this century, and inspiration is a fuel to all of this. So it is important, and obviously our partners at Limitless Space are leading that charge.
Well, we believe here that our substance is our glitz, and so if you're someone that's really interested in research and development to discover and explore the possibilities that exist in the aerospace space industry in Houston in particular, there are a lot of people here that are interested in having a conversation and creating partnership to promote our industries.
Absolutely.
Well, I want to again thank you for your time today, Two Fish, and salute all of your achievement and more importantly, our more currently at least, all of the energy you're putting forward in advancing Houston as a leader in aerospace and space. Thank you on behalf of the audience, Houston Tech Rodeo, and unapologetically Limitless Space Institute. So we love you. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Paul. I appreciate it. And thanks again to the Houston Tech Rodeo for letting me be a part of this.
Thank you. Take care.